So, today we shall be discussing the devil himself. Now, first of all, a few things about Satanism. Firstly, it's not a very popular religion. It's not a very popular faith at all, despite the fact that many people do believe that Satan exists in one form or another. The second thing is that Satanism doesn't even really, to my knowledge, have any sort of established doctrine. True, they have a book written in the 1900s, I think the mid-1900s, called the Satanic Bible, but it's not actually a Bible for Satanists, in the same way that the God Delusion is not a Bible for atheists. So, in all honesty, this seems sort of like a counterculture thing to me, really, rather than a religion, but for all intents and purposes, let's just treat it as a religion. Now, I'd like to straighten something out. Before I move any further, I'm not a Satanist. I don't believe in Satan any more than I don't believe in your God. So, even though I may be doing Satan's work in the eyes of the religious, I don't do it intentionally. And I don't do it with the intention of hating God. With this in mind, though, it's impossible for atheists technically to be Satanists, despite all the accusations that we've received over the years, especially from Christians. Doing Satan's work from the Christian perspective does not make a person a Satanist any more than doing something that your particular God would want makes you a Christian. So we established already that Satan is essentially everything that's counter to God, which is all good and all loving, so Satan's an evil asshole who resides in the place that we call hell. And hell is supposedly a place of suffering and torture where he'll choke and scream and burn for all eternity. Does anyone else see something wrong with this picture? I mean, if you speak out against the Judeo-Christian God, for example, if you're doing something that this God doesn't like, you're going to get sent to hell. Well, you're obviously not going to go to heaven, so you're going to get sent to hell. Why would Satan want to punish you if you're doing everything counter to what God wants? And you're essentially doing what he wants. You're essentially doing Satan's will, according to Christians and the Jews, and in some cases Islam. So why would Satan want to punish people who are essentially doing his work for him? In simpler terms, would it not therefore make sense for Satan to reward bad behavior and to reward behavior counter to what God and the Bible teaches us, instead of trying to punish people for it? Would it not incentivize people to step away from God, which is presumably what Satan wants? Would it not help the process if he decided to reward people for doing that instead of punishing them for all eternity? Like, this doesn't make logical sense. And my second point is, you know how Christians especially are always talking about context, and I made a whole video about this? You know how they say that all of the atrocious things that God has condoned in the Old Testament is essentially God being taken out of context? Well, can I not therefore use the exact same excuse and say that everything that Satan has done in the Bible, presumably, is taken out of context? And it would sound more believable, too, because this is a book completely biased towards one perspective, without giving any sort of insight to the opposite perspective. So I can just as easily say that everything Satan does is completely out of context, that all the things that Christians and Jews and the Muslims blame on Satan and his evil acts on the world, oh, that's just Satan being taken out of context. So, you know, in all honesty, if I had to choose a religion I liked better, I think I'd actually gravitate more towards Satanism. You know why? Because at least they don't talk a lot of shit about the other side and try and misrepresent them, or, I'm sorry, take them out of context. With regards to some of the things that people find creepy about satanic cults, like some of the weird things that they do, it's honestly just as weird to me how Christians consider that eating a cracker and drinking some grape juice or wine will magically turn into the body and blood of Christ in their mouths, and somehow is able to digest in the stomach without giving them serious indigestion. But, I see those two things as equally creepy. Furthermore, if I go back in history and I trace all of the genocides and all of the mass killings in history with regards to religion, very few do you come across in events that really include Satanists. You do come across it every once in a while, but it's not nearly as often as you'd think it might be. And you know who does most of the killing? Other Jews, Christians, and Muslims. It always happens to be the big three that tend to kill off each other more than Satanists killing off all three. The irony is just orgasmic. So when I'm asked what my opinions of Satanism really are, the only difference I see between the three Abrahamic faiths and Satanic-based faiths are that one tends to be a bit more socially acceptable and more of a moneymaker. One happens to include an authority figure dressed in a bathrobe that happens to condone child molestations in his holy building while everyone decides to look the other way, while the other does not have any of those things, or at least does not do as much of this kind of shit. Thanks for watching, guys, and may the truth always be heard.